tell us about your program for your festival recital.
It's quite a varied program. It sort of has a dance theme to it, in that each piece is a type of dance, which was not strictly intentional. It just happened to be that all the pieces I wanted to play had ended up having this in common. So I start with Bach Fourth Partita, which is the piece I've been playing for a couple of years now. It's actually the first piece of Bach I performed publicly. It's a very exuberant piece in D major. Bach was a composer I really didn't feel much of an affinity of until reasonably late. I mean, Chopin was maybe sort of my favourite composer when I was very young, and Bach was something I was turned off until maybe about the age of 14. I think I'd had too many sort of dry, very academic readings of the music, and I thought that's what all it was about. And then when I was 14, I heard, I was introduced to a recording by Samuel Feinberg, the Russian pianist, of the world champion clavier, and it sort of opened a window for me into Bach's music, because he was someone who was playing Bach on a piano using all the resources that a piano gives one, and all the colours that you can get from a grand piano. And suddenly I sort of seemed to see what it was all about, and I was interested in playing Bach's music. So yeah, I start with Bach, and then two Chopin polonaises. Two Chopin polonaises which are very different emotionally. And the first one is often referred to as the tragic polonaise. It's Opus 44 in F sharp minor. It was written in, I think, 1841. And the outer sections are very angry, quite violent, and sort of anguish there. It's very turbulent music. And the middle section is quite a contrast to that, because it's a more sort of graceful mazurka. The second polonaise provides a big contrast to this. It's his Andante Spianato and Grand Polonaise Brillianti, Opus 22, which he wrote. I think he started writing it in his last years in Poland, and it's more of a sort of salon piece, I suppose. It's lighter in character. It starts with the Andante Spianato, which is a gently flowing piece in G major, and then into the Polonaise. And the Polonaise is much more sort of quicksilver in its emotional content. There's moments of wit and playfulness and elegance and charm, and then there's also moments of poignancy and of more melancholy, of a more melancholy nature. And then we have the interval, and then the second half is devoted to pieces of music which are not that often played. We start with some Scriabin mazurkas, which are some of his earliest music, and it's music in which we really hear the influence of Chopin. The mazurkas, and I think you can really hear Chopin's influence there, but also with Scriabin's, obviously through Scriabin's own language and through his own harmonic language. He wrote them, I think, when he was 17, and then we moved from them to a piece that was written about 14 years later than this, which is his Waltz, Opus 38. And the Waltz is an interesting piece. It's sort of a waltz in the skies, as it were. It's one of these pieces of Scriabin which is very ecstatic and seems to float there. But it's written before his atonal period, so it's a tonal piece of music, and so it's one of his most accessible works. Really, and really quite a masterpiece. And then some Granados, a Spanish composer. Again, as with the Scriabin mazurkas, it's one of his earliest pieces. He wrote it when he was 20. It's his Waltzes Poeticos, which is a set of waltzes. They're very charming music, again, in a sort of salon style. And then we end with the Charles Le Bleu Daniel transcription, which is a fiendishly difficult virtuoso transcription of Strasbourg Waltz. Very inventive in the textures that it uses and the figuration that he puts into it.
So you mentioned just now about Bach, and that one of the awakenings for you to Bach's music was listening to Feinberg's recording and noticing how much color there is. It's possible to generate in Bach's music on the piano. So am I right to say that you are an advocate of playing Bach on a modern piano, and you do not try to what's your view of Bach's music being written for the harpsichord, and now pianists trying to reproduce it on a totally different instrument?
Well, I think you have to be aware that by playing it on a modern instrument, you're in doing so making a transcription. I think you have to take what you have, and except you're playing it on a piano and try to get the best from the music you can on the piano. But I think you should be aware of period performances and the kind of things that are good harpsichord players do in them. It's quite interesting to listen to, for example, Trevor Pinnock playing the fourth partito, and to hear some of the agogic things that he does, some of the rubato that he does, which suit very well the harpsichord, and also sort of spreading chords in the left hand and this kind of thing, because on a harpsichord you don't have dynamic variation, so you have to resort to these other expressive devices to put something into the music. So I don't think one should ignore those kind of issues, but one should try to draw from a lot of traditions when you're approaching any music, really. Try to draw from a lot of traditions and to look at them all and see what you might like to, extract from some modes of thinking, and to develop something which is very personal and very much your own in your approach to a piece of music.
Right, and still maximize the potential of the modern instrument.
Yes, I think so. I mean, I think if Bach... It's interesting to consider whether... the harpsichord is an instrument which is limited because of the fact that it only plays one volume. Of course, you can put stops on and changes it, but principally it doesn't play loud and soft. I suppose music originated in the voice, and the voice is the ultimate expressive instrument in that you can sing loud and you can sing soft, and with all these colours there. And I don't think that any composer could have been satisfied with the harpsichord because of its limitations. So I think if Bach was presented with a piano, he surely would be very fascinated by it, and would want it to be used to its full potential. Of course, he probably would have written his music slightly differently if he'd been presented with a piano. So for this reason, you can't ignore the fact that it is for a harpsichord. But I don't think you should be limited by that fact. Well, I think my tastes are quite varied now, as illustrated by the program I picked for Singapore. But I think from a young age I was really attracted to the sort of romantic writing for the piano, and to Chopin in particular. Some of the first real pieces of music beyond the tutor books I played were by Chopin. And since then his music's been the forefront of my repertoire, I suppose. But over the years, there's been composers where I found I haven't liked, and then some kind of event has enabled me to sort of find a window into their music, as I said, with Bach and hearing Feinberg play, and to a certain extent with Beethoven and hearing Schnabel for the first time. More recently, I mean, I haven't found a great attraction to Shostakovich and Prokofiev, and sort of that kind of sound world, which, especially for the piano writing, because I found it quite harsh and percussive. But recently I've really got into that, and Bartók in particular. His piano concertos and his works for orchestra, and he is a new world. I'm sort of finding my way. I'm exploring at the moment.
And you seem to like a great deal of fun music, because you've dabbled with a fair amount of music with jazz elements, for instance. You played Gershwin. And you played Kapustin when you were here in Singapore. So I suppose...
this music, as I say, I played was by Chopin, but around the age of 9, I was also playing a lot of music by Billy Mayle, who was an English composer, wrote in a jazz style. And my grandfather got me interested in it. And I was, for a time, the youngest member of the Billy Mayle Society in London, I think by about 50 years. And I used to go there and perform at the members' matinees. But that was my first experience of jazz, and I really appreciated that idiom and that harmonic language. It was very refreshing and different to what I was used to. So played a lot of Billy Mayo, and I haven't played much caboosing. I've only played those three concert etudes, but it's something I'd like to play more of in the future. And but Gershwin, I played a number of his songs and transcriptions of songs for piano, and also Rhapsody in Blue, which I recorded just last year.
Your playing is often talked about as, harking back to the old school, to the golden age, so to speak, of piano playing. What does that actually mean to you think?
Well, I have a great interest in performances, recordings of pianists made in the early half of the 20th century. People like Maurice Rosenthal and Ignaz Friedman, and then later artists like Benjamin Grosvenor and Zhirshikansky and Horowitz and people like this. I think it was a time in which I think with all these artists you get a sense that they had their own sort of voice at the piano, their own very distinct way of playing, and their own some people, their own sound, I suppose. And I think in a lot of in the playing of those artists, I think a lot of them, their primary concern at the piano was, especially in romantic music, I suppose, was in imitating the voice. The Horowitz, for example, he said, his first, when he was very young, and his first moments at the piano, he was obsessed with singing, and he was obsessed with opera singers. He was obsessed with trying to replicate what they did with the voice at the piano, because the piano is a percussive instrument. You have a hammer hitting the string, and then the sound decays. You can't play true legato as you can on a string instrument or in a voice. So as a pianist, you sort of have to be a master of illusion to try to make what you have, which is a percussive instrument, sound expressive. And I think they were the masters of that. There's certain devices that they've used, like asynchronization of the hands, which is which could be used to intensify a certain part of a phrase, or to take away, or to come away at a certain part of a phrase. I once heard in an interview Raymond Loewenthal, who was an American pianist. He was talking about this idea of imitating the voice at the piano, and he said that compared the sort of splitting of the hands to, it's like when a singer has words, and so they have different colours that come through those words, and they have consonants and they have vowels, and in maybe playing the right hand slightly before the left hand, it's like putting a consonant before that particular note or that particular word in the music. So I think there was this element of them imitating the voice at the piano, but I think it was just a sort of a freer time artistically, and they were very individual musicians, and they had their own ideas, and perhaps it wasn't so much of a concern with strictly obeying the score. I think they weren't afraid to be individual and to go against maybe the composer's intentions if they really felt a strong belief that it was more effective in a way.
Have you consciously actually gone against something that you see on the written score?
Well, I suppose I have on a few occasions. I can't think of a good example right now. But the score is. Horowitz said the score is no Bible. Everything that the composer wanted in it could not possibly be notated. So even if you do believe that you should follow all the composer's intentions, there's so much that you can put on above those, and there's so much scope for creativity there. But I don't think it's necessary to follow everything exactly. I think there's a lot of examples of performances in which the pianist's goal was to obey the composer's intentions strictly, which are incredibly convincing. I mean, there's a lot of examples of the opposite, where they have a very free approach to it. I think Zhirshikansky, for example, was a pianist who maybe took a lot of liberties in certain music, and he had a very improvisational way of playing, which sometimes, I think his performance of the Liszt Sonata, as an example, I think is very interesting, because if you listen to it with the score, it's almost disturbing in a way, because he takes so many liberties with the pulse and with timing. It's almost as if he's not playing what's written. And with it in front of you, probably doesn't make a lot of sense. But if you put the score away and you listen to it, you realise that he's created something here which is quite unique and is very convincing if you put aside watch, what you see in front of you. Yes, the first time I came, I gave a recital in the Victoria Concert Hall, and the second time was the Schumann Concerto in Esplanade, and yeah, they're both wonderful acoustics, and the audiences were so receptive, and the Singapore Symphony Orchestra is very fine orchestra as well. My first occasion, I was able to have more of a look around the city, and I visited Little Italy and not Little Italy, sorry, Little India, and various other places. So I got to see a lot of Singapore there. I'm looking forward to it. It'd be great to be back again. It's always nice to return to a place you've visited a few times before. I know my way around Singapore now. I know where everything is, and I can find my way to the concert hall. So I'm looking forward to it. Probably the thing I'm least looking forward to is the humidity, which I never really quite got used to my last two trips. But still, yeah, it'll be a lot of fun. People in Singapore are so friendly, and it's a great place to be. So I'm looking forward to visiting. I don't know. In terms of my playing, I'm probably not the best judge. I'm sure other people to judge better than.
Well, how do you feel? I mean, as a musician, making the music, do you feel that the process is a little bit different? The thought as well as the actual process.
I suppose I'm probably more confident, and I'm probably more confident in my ideas in the music, and I don't know. It's quite difficult for me to talk about myself in this way.
Has all that added experience on stage and in the studio helped?
I'm sure it has. In the last few years, I've made a number of recordings, which I hadn't really done before then. So I had the experience of playing in the studio, and I've been performing all the time during those 2 years and adding new repertoire to my output. So I only hope I've improved. That's all I can say. And if people want to judge, then they should come along to the concert.
Is it less of a nervous affair walking out on stage now that you've had more experience playing in front of a live audience?
Yes, I suppose it probably is. I think when I came to Singapore for the first time, I was incredibly nervous because I often find that giving debuts in foreign countries for the first time is very scary. So hopefully I'll be more relaxed in Singapore, which will probably mean I'll play better. So, yeah, I hope so. Anyway.
Well, you've been back with the orchestra, and now you're back again at the festival. So you must have done something right in 2010.
I suppose so. Yeah.
You've got all these awards that came between these past 3 years. What do they mean to you?
Well, I mean, it was an honour to receive them, I suppose. I mean, they're all, most of them were for my first disc, which was my first profession. Well, it wasn't my first recording, but my first recording with a major label, and it's wonderful to have such recognition for that. I mean, of course, making a recording like that, you're incredibly apprehensive about how it's going to be received, and so to have it received in such a positive way is very touching. But, it hasn't really changed the way I think about music and the level to which I'm self-critical, and I'm just all the time trying to improve, and with every concert I try to improve. I mean, often I record them and then afterwards I listen back to see what I can do better next time, and so I think that's a healthy attitude, and that's how I try to go along the road into the future.